I feel the need for speed. Ow!
Hi there, and welcome to Baseball by Design. I am SportsLogos.net minor league baseball correspondent Paul Caputo, broadcasting live, as always, from the Sunday Helmet Hall of Fame in my basement in Fort Collins, Colorado. This week, we're going to be talking about the Las Vegas Aviators, the AAA Las Vegas Aviators. Later on in this episode, I'll be speaking with James Christopher, who you know as the host of Let's Get to the Show, but also he is a noted film student and critic and teacher and producer. And I will also be speaking with F-16 pilot Vic DiTommaso. And of course, Dan Simon of Studio Simon will be back with another of his Studio Simon Stumpers. Right now, I'm so happy to be joined by Jim Gemma, who is the Aviators Media Relations Director. Jim, nice to see you again after it's been like a decade since you and I first met. So it's very nice to see you again.
Yeah, I've gone from Cashman Field to the Las Vegas ballpark. So things have gone, it's definitely a 180 from the Cashman Field to where we are now, Paul, the Las Vegas ballpark. It's an incredible venue. And of course, we've changed logos. We obviously rebranded in 2019 when we went up to Summerlin because we're getting a new affiliate too at the A's. So because AAA Syracuse was purchased by the Wilpons at the time, and it makes geographic sense that the Mets obviously would go back to Syracuse, but we had a great run with them. So we had so many great players.
Yeah, well, that when I went and saw them play when I went and saw you all play as the 51s, they were a Mets affiliate. I think I might have seen them when they were a Dodgers affiliate too. So I think I saw them a couple of times. I've been to the new ballpark twice. It is gorgeous. It is an absolute pleasure to watch a game there. I got a massive ice cream thing with churros in it, and that was a great baseball experience. And then to have obviously there's the Red Rock Casino is right there, and so that's that was I'm sure the teams stay there right when they come to visit. But yeah, what a place to see a ball game. And in this new brand that came with the with the new ownership with the Howard Hughes Corporation, I'll just ask you to say it in your words. How come a team in Las Vegas, Nevada is called the Aviators?
Well, it really does fit because I'm born and raised here. We have Nellis Air Force Base here. We have, one of the greatest airports in the country. We have the best team travel. I mean, we have 99.9% of our trips are nonstop. With the hub we have here Southwest, but a lot of it is the Nellis Air Force Base. Nellis Air Force Base is really the home to pilot training and big time pilot training with the F1s. And obviously the Aviators pays homage to Howard Hughes. The Spruce Goose, he had the land speed of 352 miles per hour in 1935 with the H1 racer. So I mean, he had a great background in aviation, and it's really a cool name too to go along with the new color scheme we had. So it kind of just fell into place. It kind of obviously going up to Summerlin with the new ballpark, we totally rebranded. It seemed like every 18 years we changed our logo. It was intentionally done that way. 1983 to 2000, we were with the Padres. We're the Las Vegas Stars. 2001, we went to the 51s, which is now, a lot of movies have been on it now. Area 51.
Sure.
And, about the alien, the aliens are housed there and all that good stuff. But 2001 to 2018, we were with the 51. So 18 years with that, 18 years with the Stars. So that's 36 years. And obviously with the pandemic, this is our 40th anniversary season, the fourth year with the A's, thus our fourth year with the Las Vegas Aviators. But it all ties in with the aviation history with Nellis Air Force Base with Red Flag. And, our airport's the one of the 10 busiest airports in the world. And to go along with what we just mentioned about Howard Hughes with the Spruce Goose and the H1 racer, he was really into aviation.
For sure. I know that you've been with the team for quite some time. Were you with them when they were the Stars?
Yeah, it's kind of my past life now is sports information and also the sports information director at UNLV. Two different stints. I was an assistant and an SID. So when I was doing that in the 80s, I'm old. In the 80s and the 90s and the tip of 2000, off and on almost every year, not quite. I was official scorer, so it was a seasonal gig. I was at the very first game in 1983, and never forget it. It's ironic. It's the 40th anniversary season. We're wearing throwback uniforms on some nights of the 1983 team. There's only one year in 1983 they wore the Stars jerseys, star in the front. But yeah, I've been involved with it. It was with the Stars. I was hired full time by our president CEO Don Logan in January of 2003. So, counting the pandemic season, this is my 20th season, actually 21st season. So yeah, I've kind of been around for all of it. Just watch all the logos. I really like the Stars name. The 51s really had its niche for a while. It was the number one seller. The kids loved the alien head, but I really do like the Aviators look. The logo. We've heard people say, "Oh, it's a bug man and all this stuff." It's a futuristic aviator pilot. I mean, basically what it is. We've gone to the LV hat a lot,
Yeah.
but it ties in with the logo where it says AV on the V. It's the aviator head. So I mean, we have a lot of different looks. We have a great team store with a lot of different looks to the logo and schemes. All in all, I think it's great.
I have dropped some money in that team store. I've got a bright yellow T-shirt. I've got I have one 51s hat with the alien head on it, like the kids like you say. I've got 3 different Aviators hats, and I have one of the. I'm blanking on the Spanish. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Reyes de Plata.
Reyes de Plata. Thanks.
Yeah,
So I have that hat as well, which is a great hat.
that's a
When
cool
I
logo too. That's the Silver Knights. I should say the Silver Kings. I should say it's really cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. I remember when we talked about the 51s, you were telling me that your preference as a sort of traditional baseball guy was for the more traditional baseball looks. You liked the LV cap then for the media relations guide for the players to have that. This Aviators brand is obviously a little bit more classical, a little more traditional. That obviously was an intentional decision by the organization to go a little more classic, a little more sort of sophisticated looking with this new look with the new ballpark. How's that been received by the fans?
It's been amazing. I mean, obviously the first year before, I mean, we do need to mention about the pandemic because this industry got destroyed. As you know, we didn't even
Yeah.
get to play.
Yeah.
Especially in Las Vegas, the sports and entertainment. I have no friends that are in the entertainment business, and they couldn't get on stage. And it was like, you look back 3 years ago, things were so much better. But counting before that, 2019, we set a record 650,934. We led all minor leagues, and then back in 2021, a little bit more than a month, we were only 50% capacity. We had, I believe, 428,000. Then we got back finally full capacity. We had 518,000. We've drawn 300,000 plus all 36 seasons at Cashman Field, but obviously you've seen the ballpark. It's up to a next level now. So we've led the PCL, AAA West the first year in attendance, and we're going to be nip and tuck this year with Albuquerque and El Paso. It's going to be a good 3-team race, but that's good for the league. So right now we're leading the league in attendance too. But you've been in there. The Lower Bowl is a major league stadium, and having downtown Summerlin right there, the location's everything. We're the only team in Southern Nevada, which is really great. But as you said, the Red Rock Casino, the visiting teams stay there. Red Rock's a great Stations Casino is a great partner of ours. So it's all fallen into place. But everybody always says location. We have a great location.
Well, and AAA baseball acknowledged the park, I think, in a really great way for you all by hosting the AAA championship. I guess it was a tournament last year. It's going to be back in Las Vegas this year, but it's going to be a single game rather than a tournament. Is that right?
Yeah, they're going to go to 2 halves. The first half play the second half. The first half winner for both the IL and the PCL, best 3 out of 5, and then both the winner of the IL will play the winner of the PCL on Saturday, September 30th at the Las Vegas ballpark for the AAA National Championship game. So, I mean, that's really the best place to have it.
What was that environment like last year when you hosted the AAA championship?
It was really great having Nashville there because they used to be in the PCL, and the Durham Bulls actually won the whole thing. They defeated Reno, but a lot of people from Reno came down. It was really a good atmosphere. We had 5,000 plus for a couple of the games, and it was loud, and it was really the championship game was probably the best game played of all the AAA. when Durham played Reno, that was probably the best game we had in the ballpark all year. It was really an exciting game. And no, it's always good to showcase things like that. The game is on the MLB network, so I assume we'll be back on there this year. We haven't heard anything further, but I would think that wouldn't be a surprise if it was back on there.
Well, I'm hoping to get out there this year. We've got a handful of us who do podcasts about minor league baseball, and we're all trying to get out there. What are the tickets hard to come by? Is it a hard ticket to get?
No, I mean, it's going to be a little bit better this year. With our season ticket base, they'll have first crack to purchase tickets. But for sure, we seat 8,196. But if need be, like we've done the last couple home stands, we can get 10,000 in there for firework nights, and we have the party deck and the pool and the berm and standing room and all that. So there are definitely tickets available for that. But definitely as the summer gets going, I would, if I was a fan, I would purchase that sooner than later.
You mentioned all the sort of aspects and the amenities of that ballpark there. The last time I was there, we got there good and early, and we just took a slow walk all the way around the ballpark, and it was it was really, I mean, just such a high quality facility. It's such a great place to watch a baseball game, and it was sort of like a perfect summer night. Like, it wasn't too hot. It was a pretty great baseball experience. I did have a question about the logos, and this is maybe, I don't know if this is something that I've noticed or if anyone else has pointed out, but if you look at the 51's alien head, and then you look at the Aviators, the face with the visor, and then you look at the Reyes de Plata, which is, essentially a based on basically a skull, they're all sort of like roughly the same proportions. It's like face. Is there something going on there intentionally with that design, or is that just by happenstance?
I think what Reyes de Plata, with all the Reyes de Plata teams, I know MILB, I don't know if it was Brandios or whatever, they designed all those logos. Because obviously the Reyes de Plata, Las Vegas or Nevada is the silver state, and that's really a minor. When they used to go in the mines for silver and all that good stuff. Again, that's a futuristic aviator pilot, and it's so many different colors because the Red Rock Canyon is supposed to be shining off the visor of the futuristic air pilot.
Yeah.
So it kind of gets long and involved a little bit of it. Just looking at that too on there. The color inspiration, the Las Vegas sunset, the mountain range featured in the Aviators goggles resembles the mountain range found in the Summerlin logo, which the Summerlin logo is downtown Summerlin too. So it all kind of ties in.
Yeah. The Reyes de Plata, that was one of the first four it wasn't even called the Copa de la Diversión back then. It was one of the first four Spanish language brands back in, what was it, 2017, before even the Aviators were in existence. You had the Reyes de Plata logo, and that one has endured. I know that new teams are introducing new Copa brands every year, but that is tied with the Mariachis and maybe one or two others, tied for the longest of these Copa brands. That obviously has been very successful for you all.
Yeah, it was late July of 2017. It was us and AAA Charlotte. It was a team in the California League. I can't think of it, and one other team in AA. So we kind of launched it, and then, as you said, it's kind of picked up. We've done 17, 18, 19. Now this is our sixth year, 21, 22, 23. So now it's almost 100 teams now or something. So it's nice. It's different. So anything to appeal to the fans. That's kind of what minor league baseball is all about, as you well know.
Sure. Well, Jim, this has been so much fun to catch up with you again. I guess every 10 years you and I can hang out for a minute and talk about talk about this franchise. And then, every 18 years I'll check in with you and see what the new brand is going to be.
Yeah, that's true. It seems to was heading that way when we were doing it. And it was a coincidence. But again, this is it's actually the 5th year of the logo, counting 2020, but this is the 40th anniversary season. All the PCL started April here of 1983 as the Las Vegas Stars. And a great trivia question: Bruce Bochy hit the first home run in Cashman Field history as a member of the Stars. So that's always a cool trivia answer to the question.
That is a good trivia question.
Yes.
Well, Jim, thanks so much for taking the time out. Where can people find the Aviators online and on social media?
Yeah, the best thing is Aviators LV on our website, aviatorslv.com, and at Aviators on Instagram and Twitter. And I think we're even on TikTok, probably the same. LC Jones, our manager of social media, does an incredible job. But at Aviators LV is definitely for Twitter. Facebook's just Las Vegas Aviators. So yeah, we're all over the place.
I'll have to thank LC Jones sometime, because the Aviators Twitter account makes a big deal out of me and ice cream at these games, because that's sort of
good.
yeah. So LC has retweeted some of my ice cream things out there. So
That's good to know. Still like to hear that. So
well, Jim, thank you so much, and look forward to catching up with you. I'll let you know if we're going to make it out to the All-Star game.
sounds good, Paul.
All right, thanks, Jim.
You're welcome.
All right, everyone, welcome back. What a thrill right now for me to welcome back to the show my friend James Christopher, who is not only the host of the web series Let's Get to the Show, but also the director of the Austin Revolution Film Festival. And this is where these worlds are colliding right now. James Christopher, thanks for being here.
I'm first of all thrilled, that I'm a fan, and I was tickled at the invite, because I don't get to do this very much, where we get to actually talk about a film and what it means and stuff like that, outside of me lecturing, and those kids, roll their eyes and don't listen. So this should be fun.
Well, so what you're hinting at here is the worlds colliding are the worlds of minor league baseball, which you and I love so much, but also your academic and your professional background has a lot to do with the film industry. You are a filmmaker and like I said, the director of this very popular film festival in Austin, Texas. So we are going to talk about minor league baseball and the film The Aviator, of course, which you went back and rewatched in preparation for this interview. So I'm psyched about that.
Yeah, I did. And it was fun to, one of the things that I've done a good job, I think, maintaining my career of is I'm still capable of passively watching a movie. I don't sit down and pick it apart every time. I can still be a fan. And so it was kind of fun to go back and now watch it differently.
Yeah.
With that sort of eye looking at pacing and shots and this and that. So yeah, it was fun to revisit from that vein.
Well, so let's get into that. This is obviously a minor league baseball team, as we've already addressed in this issue, that was the Las Vegas 51s. Totally fun brand, in my opinion. I really liked that brand. I was sorry to see it go, but they rebranded in the image of Howard Hughes, the Aviator. That obviously is the subject of the movie The Aviator. Let's just start in general. Is The Aviator a good movie?
Yeah, I think it is. And one of the things that that I kind of hinted at before you and I came on is I'm not necessarily your everything Scorsese does is great guy. And I'm certainly not everything that Leo does is great guy. So what I think is awesome is those two combined created something, I think, very compelling, very sad, really diving into this Howard Hughes character that, because of the nature of his life, nobody really knew a whole lot about. And I will tell you that my first introduction to him was in the movie The Rocketeer. And so that tells you how deep they dove into that movie. Not at all. So yeah, I think so. I think pacing wise, I think it's top to bottom filled with really amazing performances. And it's something that Leo, look, I know mathematically he's a good actor, and it shows off in this particular film.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because it tells the story of Howard Hughes, who died in 1976, right? Like, so here is a minor league baseball team that's named for, I mean, obviously, as we've discussed already, the Howard Hughes Corporation purchased the Aviators, built this great new ballpark. I think we should be calling them the Las Vegas Aviators of Summerlin, because they are not in Las Vegas proper. They're about a 25-minute drive outside of Las Vegas. Obviously Cashman Park was, that was also outside of Las Vegas. It was closer to downtown than it was the Strip. But, here's this character, Howard Hughes Corporation still exists, but the Howard Hughes himself died in 1976, right? Like, so here's Leonardo DiCaprio playing this really eccentric character in this pretty good movie, right? Like, it's a really enjoyable movie. I've seen it. I haven't seen it for a while. You've seen it more recently than I have. Let's get into Howard Hughes himself, the Aviator. Why is it appropriate? Why are we naming a baseball team after this character featured in this movie?
Well, he was obsessed with aviation, and what was kind of fascinating, and one of the things they really dive heavily into in the movie is Howard Hughes was a film director, really is kind of how he made his name, or one of the ways in which he made his name. He had a company that made a lot of money, and he used that money to dive into film at the very beginning. And they're covering him shooting his World War I film, which was about planes. And the guy was so obsessed with shooting a aerial footage that would not be equaled until Top Gun, like in 40, 60 years later, by getting 30 something cameras, strapping them to planes and letting them roll. And it took him so long to shoot it and edit it that during that time, movies went from silent to sound, and he had to then reshoot a bunch of that stuff, but he was obsessed. And I think that obsession carries through. And for perspective, probably on your big budget movies, 6 cameras is maybe max, which you'll see. On an indie film like mine, we would sometimes roll 2 or 3.
Yeah.
So to have 37 or 38 or whatever it was, all that rolling the complete scenes, it's miles and miles of footage. And so then it carries through to him pushing aviation invention in real life, trying to build things for the military. He had designed, it's funny because the C-130 Hercules exists, but he had designed another plane with the nickname Hercules before that never got off the ground, or not very much. It was sarcastically known as the Spruce Goose. I think it only flew once. But this guy survived plane crashes. This guy survived. He was as bad a pilot as Harrison Ford, I think. And so it was, it's honestly very appropriate that the Las Vegas team is called the Aviators, because outside of the Wright brothers, I'm not sure many people have done more for aviation than Howard Hughes.
And he spent a certain amount of time in Las Vegas, right? Like the end of his life was spent in Las Vegas. The end of his life, affected by the syphilis diagnosis, right? Like, and he got really, really super eccentric. When I watched the movie, I was surprised by that. Like, I'm the first to admit, I was not familiar really with the history of Howard Hughes, the character, right?
And so neither.
This whole movie was sort of it felt like fiction to me, because I didn't know how it was going to turn out. I mean, I understand it was historical fiction, but I didn't know how it was going to turn out. And the really eccentric years that at the end of his life were startling to me, right? Like, startling to me. I'm curious to know what you know about Howard Hughes, because obviously as a filmmaker, you'd be familiar with Howard Hughes, the individual who was the film tycoon. This movie about him, how accurate was it, by your understanding of to his life?
From my understanding, pretty accurate. I mean, movies are never going to be 100%. They are in fact adaptations. Like, it's there's a lot of pushback. It's funny that we're doing this because in 2 weeks we have the episode of my show in Memphis, and I've got an Elvis impersonator in Graceland on, and we're talking about that movie and how it's accurate in spirit. One of the things that I didn't know about him beyond the syphilis. So what I knew about him was that he was this really, really obsessed guy who became essentially an agoraphobic and a recluse. Yeah. I didn't realize not just the syphilis, but the movie really portrays that this guy was extreme obsessive compulsive. Yeah. And there's a really powerful scene in the movie where it's really at the bottom of the film, and it's really taking over his life. And a guy that's handicapped comes into the bathroom and wants Leo to hand him a paper towel, and he won't do it because he's afraid of touching this guy that just went to the bathroom. Yeah. So that, combined with the syphilis and combined with everything else, led him to become this recluse that really we don't know a whole lot about until he died in 1976. And so again, I think one of the things that was really forward thinking about that movie was portraying obsessive compulsive as what it is, a mental disorder, and not something that should be a joke. And I think that was really important for the movie.
Yeah, it was really like the obsessive compulsive aspect of it really led to, I think, his success in so many different industries, right? So this is always, and again, I'm not making light of that, but to say, this is something we try to do on this when we look at mascots for a team. We look at, what a team is named for, what makes that an appropriate name for a minor league baseball team. What is it about Howard Hughes, the individual, that you think might translate into, okay, here's this is what would make him effective as a baseball player, maybe?
So I'm gonna go romantic on you, if that's okay.
That's good. You knew this question was coming. I like that.
I figured, I know your show really well, so I figured this is where the walk we were going to take. And I think Howard Hughes was a renegade, right? He was a guy that did what he wanted to do. He played by his own rules. He did his best to stand out. And I think that in your best minor league brands and your best minor league teams, they're doing kind of the same thing. They're trying to create something new. They're trying to be bold in their design and bold in their action. And I think you see that in both what the Aviators are doing. I've been doing my prep work. I'm going to get to go my first 2 games this year. I will wear the 51s hat for one of them, though.
Of course.
For you.
Pour one out.
But I definitely think that that's part of it. And I think, you and I go up against this all the time. There are people who don't really know about this community or this industry that is minor league baseball. And they look at names and they might have thought Aviators, okay, something generic. Vegas had an aviation history because that's how it started with Air Force bases in the 50s. Or Trash Pandas, what a stupid joke, instead of looking at what's deeper. And I do think you see a lot of the best aspects of a minor league baseball team, I think, are reflected in Howard Hughes's approach to things. Obviously, without the extreme and sad end, but I do think it's 100% appropriate.
I think I started to get at this earlier, and I didn't quite know how to phrase it. It was the way his life spun out, and he became a recluse, and he was dealing with the illness, and he was dealing with his mental issues. That it was almost sort of, when I realized that was the story, it was almost sort of strange to me that they would name a baseball team after him, right? Because it's not fun, right? Like, there's nothing fun about what happened to Howard Hughes.
But maybe my hope is that by doing that, it focuses on the positive parts of his life, and he doesn't just become this crazy guy who went crazy and died in isolation, right? Like, maybe it's going to allows Las Vegas to now tell the good part of the story, because again, he did a lot to advance flight and cinema and things that he's done that we're still feeling the effects of today. And so maybe it allows you to tell that story by having it be the name of the team.
In your opinion, as a film professional, how much are we still feeling the effects of Howard Hughes in movies today?
Every day. And I'll explain why. Obviously, film technology changes by the minute, right? You have in your pocket, Paul Caputo in Colorado, have in your pocket a higher tech cinema device and sound recorder than they had in 1940. But what hasn't changed, and this is how I focus my own teaching, I don't teach the tech because the tech changes, but how we tell stories and how we put stories together hasn't changed very much. And one of the things you got from Hughes's film, particularly the war movie, was the concept of editing 32 cameras worth of stuff and creating what in a non-linear fashion, what wouldn't make any sense to watch individually, and put it into something that actually makes sense and you can track it with your eye. That's one of the things. He's one of the pioneers in that. And it's definitely something we still feel every day.
Yeah, no,
it's about editing, like, sorry to get on this thing, but editing should not make sense, but it does. We can cut back and forth to people, and it belies logic that we understand, that we know the geography of what's happening, and it makes sense to us. It shouldn't work, but it does. And part of that is for stuff that he pioneered along with others.
So one of the other questions that I had for you was, and I think I answered it myself to the point where I'm gonna answer the question for you, and then we can talk about talk about the answer. I was gonna say, if Howard Hughes were around today, what would he have wanted to name a minor league baseball team after? And I feel like I have an answer to that question, but I'll ask you, what do you think? What do you think if Howard Hughes, instead of the corporation, and if the person owned this team, what's he naming his team?
So my first thing, like, if I were Howard Hughes, I would have just turned into the Spruce Goose thing, but I don't think he would have, because he didn't like the name.
Yeah.
So I probably think maybe the Galaxy, after the one thing that he worked so hard on to bring that plane together. And again, to his obsessive compulsiveness, but he was involved in every piece of the design, including what the gauges look like.
Yeah.
Instead of just assuming gauges are gauges. So I think that might be what he would have gone for.
Okay. All right.
What
I
do
like
you
it.
have?
Well, I was thinking that he would end up with some sort of airplane themed brand, and it got me thinking about what are the airplane based minor league baseball team logos that are out there already. And the first one I came up with was the Ironbirds.
Okay.
So I like that, the sort of cartoon, fighter jet, the Aberdeen Ironbirds. I don't know. That to me felt like something that Howard Hughes would have come up with as a minor league baseball. What am I missing? What are some other airplane based?
Well, I know in one of the collegiate summer leagues you have the Sabres, or the Silver Sabres, which is named after a Korean era fighter jet.
Right. There's the Flying Tigers.
Yeah, which is that's low A, right?
Yeah, well, there's no low A anymore. I guess it's
just
single A, right? Yeah, it's just A.
So that's A.
Yeah, the
we look
Lakeland
back there
Flying
and
Tigers.
we used to have the Jethawks in Lancaster,
Yeah.
but they are not there anymore.
Yeah. So this is good because then people will now people will chime in on Twitter with all the ones that we missed. So
yeah, exactly. As I'm looking around going, can we call Flying Squirrels one? The Astros are spaceships, but that doesn't quite count. Oh, you know what? The Greenville Flyboys, that's close enough.
Oh, the Flyboys, absolutely. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
So, I know you asked me about this. I have the honor of being a regular contributor to Let's Get to the Show. I have a lot of fun with that. We get to talk about old and mostly new brands that are out there in the minor league baseball Twitterscape. And you often will ask me my opinion of them. So I'll just ask you, what do you think?
Yeah.
How do you like the Aviators logo? You're wearing the cap right now.
I'm wearing the cap now. I'll be honest. It's a brand that, for the most part, works for me top to bottom. The main logo had to grow on me at first, the sort of aviator helmet. But you already know that I love the sort of gradient orange to yellow color scheme.
Certainly do.
Very familiar to that. I went ahead, I ordered the cap and I'm not going for another 2 months. So I was excited to get it. They have a couple of New Jersey looks as well that maybe are new to me. I hadn't seen them yet that I'm still kind of trying to figure out. So I actually think it's a really strong brand. And I think, you know what I like about it, Paul? I like that some of the brands have a more classic design to them. Not everything has to be goofy and silly. And I think when we can get a minor league baseball at large where all these brands can work a little differently, I think you really get what makes the sport unique. And there's no one that looks like it. And yet at the same time, you can pivot in a lot of different ways with this particular look. I prefer the road cap, but I think that's what really is kind of the strength of the brand.
So I have this association with the logo every time I see it. Years and years ago. So my baseball palooza buddies also like to go to Las Vegas when they can. We like to go hit Vegas together. I'm not a huge gambler. I do like to play. If I could break even playing blackjack for 3 hours, that would be like the best night of my life, right? Like just getting like to hang out and break even while gambling would be great for me. But one time we were there and we went and we did at sunset the I forget what it was called. It was like the Big Shot or something, but it's on top of the stratosphere. It was like an amusement ride where they strap you in and they shoot you straight up in the air, basically, like with this like jet propulsion, basically straight up in the air. We did it right around sunset in Las Vegas. And I swear to God, I felt like I was being launched into the sky, right? Like I just thought like
you would never catch me on that, but yeah.
I am just being launched into the desert, basically, because you can't, you're on top of this building that's a couple 100 feet tall already, and you can't see under your feet. And so you're basically like in the middle of the sky and you're being launched up into the sky with a certain amount of force. And when I see that, the colors of the logo and how they're reflected in, what they created for this brand, it absolutely brings me back to that moment, like what the sky looked like in the distance as I was on top of that ride on top of the stratosphere. For whatever reason, they nailed it with those colors. So that's an association that I have with it.
Let me just tell you, as a guy who used to ride in helicopters for a living, I'll take your word for it. You will not catch me. And I don't know why I can't do any kind of stuff like that, but I'll take your word for it, man.
I haven't done it for a long time, except for with my kids at the Ocean City, New Jersey boardwalk in the summertime when they like to ride the rides. So James Christopher, thank you so much for joining. Where can people find you in all of your various outlets online?
Well, Well, the best thing to do is just go to Let's Get to the show, and basically there's a link tree there, get you everywhere. And yeah, I mean, I just want to say again, thank you for being such a big part of Let's Get To, and I'm looking forward to this season because we're going to do a lot more. I have some ideas of how to incorporate you even more, so we will I'll be circling with you back as soon as this interview's over. Actually,
I'm very excited about this possibility. James Christopher, thanks so much for joining.
thanks for having me.
All right, everyone, welcome back. I am so pleased to be joined right now by Major Vic DiTommaso, who is an F-16 pilot with the U.S. Air Force. And if that name sounds familiar to you, DiTommaso, yes, Vic is Anna's brother. If you're a listener of the Baseball Bucket List podcast, and you should be, Vic is Anna's brother. Anna heard I was doing an episode on the Las Vegas Aviators and said, you got to talk to my brother about this. And absolutely, I did want to. And so, Vic, thank you so much for joining me. I'm so glad that you're here.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here, Paul. I appreciate it.
I just have to say, I'm a huge fan of your sisters. I'm a huge fan of the Baseball Bucket List podcast. So glad to be a part of Curve Brim Media with Anna. And so glad that she put us in touch for this segment.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here too.
So you are, as I mentioned, as I said in the introduction here, you are a pilot of F-16s in the U.S. Air Force. Before we get into baseball, I'm just going to say, like, what's that like? That must be just a serious rush to take off in an F-16.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is. I feel like, like most things in life, when they're new, there's a lot of excitement associated with it.
Yeah.
But I've been flying the F-16 now for a little over 10 years, and it's still awesome every time. It is still such a rush, just taking off with such a high performance aircraft, even 10 years later.
What is your speed at takeoff?
So we typically will take off around 150 to 160 knots. It's really dependent on what the configuration of the aircraft is. So the F-16 will fly with a lot of external stores typically. So whether those are fuel tanks or air-to-ground weapons, there's a lot of variation in that. So my current job, I typically fly what we call a slick F-16, which means there's nothing on it. It's completely clean baseline. So that will take off a little bit slower because the plane's not as heavy. But in my previous experience, we carry 2 external fuel tanks, 4 to 6 bombs, 3 missiles, so under that configuration, you're taking off a little bit faster because the jet's heavier.
All right. Can you describe the feeling of actually taking off? Like what's going through your head and your body as you're lifting off in an F-16?
Yeah, so for the current job I do, I'm acting as what's called a functional check pilot. So I fly aircraft that have had extremely heavy maintenance done on them.
Okay.
So in the configuration we fly in, which is no external stores at all, generally you wouldn't do a full afterburner takeoff in that configuration because it's not required. You have enough thrust without the afterburner to take off in a reasonable distance. But part of our functional check profile requires a full afterburner takeoff. So we do full AB takeoffs in the lightest possible configuration for the airplane. So as you line up on the runway, you'll push the throttle up to what we call military power, which is full power without the afterburner. And the jet will start to accelerate fairly quickly. And then when you add in the afterburner, it's really like there's a kick when the afterburner ignites. And it's, I'm trying to think of a good thing to compare it to. I don't know if you've ever been on one of the roller coasters that they use like magnets to launch the roller coaster, so it's very similar to that, because all of a sudden you've just got a ton of thrust and the thing just gets going quick.
Yeah.
And so that acceleration is, it pushes you back in the seat for sure. And then once we hit about 150 knots, we'll lift off the runway, retract the landing gear, and then just continue to accelerate with that same feeling of being just forced into the back of the seat until we hit our climb airspeed.
Amazing. I don't want to brag here, but I actually did do one of those roller coaster rides on top of the stratosphere in Las Vegas. So,
Nice.
so you and I have both really been through it, I think, when it comes to the G forces
sure.
here. So, what would you say are the mental and physical attributes that are most important for an F-16 pilot to have?
Oh man. So I'll start with physical because that one's fairly straightforward. So being small is helpful because it is a tiny, tiny cockpit. So
Okay.
I'm 5'10", and I fit pretty comfortably in the aircraft.
Okay.
But I know some taller guys, and I mean, it's cramped in there. So being a little bit on the short side doesn't hurt. And then you just want to be in decent shape because the G forces you experience when you're maneuvering the aircraft can be really, really intense and really exhausting. So to do that for an extended period of time, you want to be in pretty good shape so that you can handle the endurance required for doing that. And then mental is like realistically probably 90% of it.
Yeah.
So, it's like most things that you do in life as a professional. You train for it. You learn over an extended period of time to better yourself at your craft. So a lot of it is really knowledge based.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that because a big piece of being a fighter pilot in general is your ability to, in a very dynamic environment, to process incomplete information
Mm-hmm.
and then make decisions based off of that. So it's a hugely mentally intensive task to pilot a fighter aircraft, especially in like a combat environment where you don't necessarily know all the information you wish you had to make the best decision possible.
Okay. So I was asking about the physical attributes and the mental attributes of an F-16 pilot, because I'm trying to think about what position, if you're putting together a baseball team of, maybe military personnel, maybe folks in the Air Force in specific, what position are the pilots going to play on the baseball field? And I was trying to think, you're talking about the smaller size and the just the mental focus and general fitness, right? Like, so
Yeah.
I'm thinking shortstop, right? Like kind of the captain of the infield. You have to have this game awareness at all times. I'm thinking middle infield. Size isn't a huge deal in the middle infield. I don't know. What do you think? Do you have a thought on that?
Yeah, I think there's probably some nuance to it. So I agree with your assessment. I do think an element that's potentially applicable is whenever we fly tactically. So mission, whether we're training for a mission or we're executing an actual mission, we operate generally as a four-ship of aircraft.
Mm-hmm.
That four-ship is led by the flight lead. So the flight lead is the pilot who generates the game plan for how we're going to execute the mission, and then also kind of directs the rest of the formation to execute that game plan. So I think your shortstop is probably your flight lead in that instance.
Okay.
And then, so that's going to be position 1. So the flight will be numbered 1 through 4.
Yeah.
Number 3 will be a flight lead qualified pilot who's essentially executing as the flight lead's right-hand man.
Okay.
And then 2 and 4 are going to be your wingmen, who are fairly inexperienced typically. And their job is to just do the basics, do what they're told. So they're really your first baseman.
Okay,
right?
yeah, absolutely.
Just catch the ball.
Let us do
That's
the work
all.
and you just be there to receive it.
That's it. You do this one thing for me. And the game depends on it though, right?
Yeah.
So the wingmen are crucial because we need them to be able to execute the basic tasks that they've been instructed to do, as well as respond to any direction that they get from the flight leads airborne.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably a good analogy for it.
Okay. I like it. Wingmen are crucial. True in in the Air Force and in dating. So it's important to know, and on the ball field now too. So all right, I do have to ask you this before I let you go. Do you have a baseball bucket list, and what's left on your baseball bucket list to check off?
Oh man, I mean, I do have a baseball bucket list. I have to look at it to remember what's left on there. I mean, I'm definitely not as aspirational as Anna. So I don't have any illusions of grandeur, like visiting all 30 active major league parks.
Right.
You know, I would love to go to a World Series game.
Yeah.
I did get to go to the 2008 ALCS with my dad and my sister.
Oh, that's great. Did they win?
Yeah.
What game did you go to?
I went to game 2.
Okay.
And the Rays won on a short sac fly to right field that BJ Upton scored on from third.
Nice.
So I do remember that. And then I remember my dad went to a World Series game when the Rays were that same year with the Phillies. And then him and Anna went in 2020 in the Rays Dodgers World Series. So I have yet to be to a World Series game. So I'd say that's probably going to be at the top of my list.
That's pretty good. Your sister is going to cost me a lot of money because every time I listen to her podcast and I listen to people's baseball bucket lists, it's all stuff I want to do. And so now I've got trips to Japan and Australia and all 30 ballparks and, a minor league game in every state. And so, yeah, I'm going to end up going broke trying to, fill out my bucket list after listening to your sister's podcast there. So
yeah, it's easy to do. Are you going to do this midnight game in Alaska?
Not this year. It unfortunately it conflicts with some other stuff I have going on, so I'm not able to do it this year. But that is definitely high on my list, is to get to the Midnight Sun game. So
yeah, that sounds like a pretty cool opportunity. That's something
it does. Do. And then it's right there by like Denali National Park, and so you can go. You can make a whole thing out of it. So.
Oh yeah, for sure. You can also see Eielson Air Force Base up there in Fairbanks.
Well, can you come with me and we'll go for an F-16 ride?
Well, I'll ask if they have any 2-seaters available.
You can tell them I did that roller coaster on the Stratosphere, and so they'll know that I'm up for it.
Yeah, sounds good.
Vic, thank you so much. This has been a ton of fun to talk to you. I'm so glad, like I said, that Anna introduced us. Are you on social media? Can people find you on Twitter or Instagram or anything?
I am not. I don't have an online presence.
That's really smart. You must be pretty happy. Well, Vic, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun, and thanks for all that you do for all of us.
Yeah, happy to do it. It was nice meeting you, Paul.
Nice to meet you. All right, everyone, welcome back. So thrilled to be joined by my friend Dan Simon, replete in his eerie Howling Dead cap today. That the Howling Dead dad hat that Dan Simon's wearing right now is very cool. That's not what we're talking about right now. We're talking about the Las Vegas Aviators on this week's Studio Simon Stumpers. There's maybe a Howard Hughes question. Maybe it's going to be a gambling question. Something about the 51s, maybe about Cosmo, the mascot, looking like Jar Jar Binks. Let's see what it's going to be here. Dan Simon, Studio Stumpers, thanks for being here.
Thanks again for having me. Looking forward to today's Stumper conversation. So let's jump right into it. Here we go. Okay, in addition to the baseball team currently playing in Las Vegas, there have been several other professional minor league baseball teams named the Aviators. So our Studio Simon Stumper today asks, which of these cities was not home to a team named the Aviators?
All right, this is another 2 truths and a lie here. I've got to pick the one that is not the real one.
Yes.
All right.
Was it A, Dayton, Ohio, B, Corpus Christi, Texas, or C, Charlotte, North Carolina?
Wow. So Dayton and Charlotte make a lot of sense for having teams called the Aviators because of their connection to the Wright brothers. Wright brothers, the national monument dedicated to the Wright brothers is in North Carolina, out on the Outer Banks. Dayton has all of the teams that play in Dayton have something to do with aviation, including the Dragons. The reason the Dayton Dragons are called the Dayton Dragons is because they were looking for something that flew that was not like an airplane, that was not mechanical. So that's how come they're the Dragons. So I'm immediately making connections between teams in Charlotte and Dayton, or at least North Carolina and Dayton. That's my one hesitation about Charlotte, is that it wasn't precisely where the Wright brothers were. The Wright brothers were out on the coast. I have been to Corpus Christi. I was in Corpus Christi for a week in November 2016. They've got a lot of maritime heritage there, certainly related to the military. I'm not conjuring any connection between Corpus Christi and aviation. So I'm going to say that the correct answer, in that the location that did not have a team called the Aviators, is Corpus Christi.
Paul, you've been stumped.
Nah, I got stumped. The streak is over.
There was an independent team in Corpus Christi. Now, technically, the stadium was in Robstown, Texas, which is about 5 or 6 miles outside of Corpus Christi, but they were known as the Coastal Bend Aviators. They had an identity that featured a anthropomorphized seaplane. So you mentioned, the water there. They are, so that was, and by the way, I did that identity a long time ago. They played in the Independent Central Baseball League and the Independent American Association from 2003 to 2007. In 1928 and 1929, the Dayton Aviators played in the Class D Central League.
Okay.
And in addition to the Dayton Dragons having, as you described, an aviation-themed identity, also the University of Dayton's athletic teams are known as the Flyers. So yes, there's definitely a flight history there. You did as a matter of fact, thinking there would have been a team in Charlotte makes a lot of sense. You actually did a story for sportslogos.net in 2014 about the Charlotte Bobcats and their identity. Does it ring a bell? Do you remember doing that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I usually can't remember things that I thought 20 minutes ago, but I actually remember writing this article about the Bobcats.
Do you remember there was another name that the Charlotte ownership had considered for that team, that for which logos were actually done, and they're featured in your article? Do you remember what the name of that team was?
I'm guessing it was the Aviators.
Well, it was close. The Charlotte Flight.
The Charlotte
Flight.
Okay.
Right. So yeah, Charlotte and aviation certainly makes sense. And as a matter of fact, there is currently a team in Charlotte named the Charlotte Aviators, but it is not a baseball team.
Oh.
Check out what kind of team this is. This team is a member of Major League Quad Ball, which used to be called Major League Quidditch. And that, for those who are fans of the Harry Potter series, is a fictional sport from that series. I would imagine they had to change the name because of intellectual property reasons. So it's now called Major League Quad Ball. And by the way, this is an amateur league. So even though it's called Major League Quad Ball, it's amateur. What this sport is, apparently, is a mix of rugby, dodgeball, and tag, where the participants play, get ready for this, with brooms between their legs at all times.
Yeah.
So
I've seen versions of this out there, especially during the height of the Harry Potter craze, which my children engaged in fully when they were little. So absolutely, yeah, that I'm familiar with people playing Quidditch with brooms between their legs. So that is well, I'm glad that the Charlotte Aviators wasn't so far outside the question. I've been to the Wright Brothers Memorial there on the Outer Banks. It's a really cool place right there in the midst of a bunch of sand dunes. I'm glad for the Bobcats that they didn't go with Charlotte Flight, because every time they got eliminated from the playoffs, the headline would be that the Charlotte Flight was delayed. Dan Simon, thank you so much for bringing Studio Simon Stumpers to Baseball by Design. It's such a blast every week. We will see you next week with another Stumper.
Looking forward to it. Bye, Paul.